Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast,
a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Hey everybody, welcome back and thank you so much for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast. Mariano Alvarez here with Brent Labrada and a very special guest. And before we get into that, we want to say to you guys, this is going to be our final interview, both of the year 2023 and our final interview of season 2 of the Dog Trainers Podcast. We've gotten so much support this year. We've gotten into so many various different projects this year that we've been so excited about. We couldn't do any of that without our loyal listeners. So we love you guys so much. Thank you so much. And we will see you for season 3. Now, with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Brent to introduce our very special guest.
What's up, everybody? Yes, I just want to go ahead and double that, what Mariano said. Thank you guys again so much. We couldn't do any of this without our loyal listeners. And without further ado, I would love to introduce someone who I feel is a very wonderful influencer on the dog training community. If you guys have seen her content, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. She is very focused and determined and about the dogs and about the art of training. And there's no gimmicks and there's none of that stuff. It's all straight passion in dog training, and I really, really love it. So we asked her to be a part of this. Without further ado, Miss Stephanie Vichinsky, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. If you've never listened to an episode of our podcast, we really love to promote education, inspiration, and collaboration to all our listeners. And after getting to kind of absorb a lot of your content over the last couple months, we're really excited for this conversation, just to get to know your story, get to know more about you, and just the few conversations we've had back and forth. Really excited to hopefully become friends. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. That's excellent. Very good. Well, thank you both so much for having me. I'm super excited for today. I was actually pretty nervous about today. I'm not used to doing interviews like this, but very humbled to be here and very thankful to be here.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank you again. And I guess let's go ahead and start with the beginning. A lot of these interviews that we do, we like to start with who was Stephanie before dog training, and kind of take us a little bit through the hero's journey of where you started and how you got here.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, dogs were the thing, from the very beginning. Dogs were it. I remember my mom is really big into horror movies. So those were always playing in our house, all the time. And us kids grew up just having that be commonplace. But I remember her watching, one of the old Godzilla movies one day, and Godzilla is like demolishing cities and he's terrifying and all these other things. And then he grabs one of the little dogs and hurts the dogs. And my mom said that, I'm just blank, for everything. And they hurt the dog, and I'm crying out of the room at 3 years old that, the dog was something that was so important to me. So it's been dogs from the very beginning, probably to the embarrassment of my parents. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dog. I ran around on all fours. I barked at people that came inside the house. It was a passion of mine. And my parents, really nurtured that passion. I remember being like 6 years old and they bought me that book that, just everybody has, the Encyclopedia of the Dog.
Yep.
And I still have that book to this day, and there's doodles all over it. And it's just me drawing pictures and coloring in it and all sorts of things that kids do. But my books nowadays, when I'm still reading about things, they've got doodles all over it and notes and stuff like that. And so it's been a passion from the very beginning. And I always wanted to work with dogs my whole life. And when I first got out of high school, my goal was to go into the veterinary field. And I signed up for originally doing vet tech stuff, and then I wanted to get into the actual veterinary program, and I started volunteering at a lot of different vet clinics, anybody that would honestly take me. And I just remember it just being gut wrenching for me to watch these dogs be so injured, hit by cars, and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, I don't think this is for me. Like, how do you all keep such a level head about this? I was like, I don't think so. I don't think that this is my jam. And so my secondary passion is writing. It's always been my passion, just as much as the dog training has been. So I fell back on that, and I went to school for all that sort of stuff because the concept of dog training wasn't a thing for me. Never once even thought of it. I come from a very poor family. So when we had dogs growing up, they just stayed in the backyard. They were not vaccinated. They never once went to the vet. They ate table scraps, whatever we had left over. And that's how they lived with us. And the concept of paying any money for them in any way, just wasn't on our radar at all. So the concept of dog training, I had never thought about. And so, I did all my schooling and other things, and I adopted a dog from the Humane Society and a little chocolate lab. And I was like, you're not going to be like our dogs, that we grew up with. I was like, I want to take you everywhere with me, because I'm just in love with dogs. I want to take you everywhere with me. I want you to do everything. And this dog just dragged me down the street, and she had so much anxiety, couldn't leave her in the car, couldn't do anything. I was like, we've got to fix this, because I want a life with you. And so I remember just Googling, how do you get a dog to walk on a leash? And YouTube videos of dog trainers were coming up. People who were legitimately making a career out of dog training were coming up. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, this is a legitimate field, that this is something that somebody can do. Because 15 years ago, dog training wasn't like what it is now. I mean, it's not every person under the sun wasn't a dog trainer back then. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I stopped my studies. I was going to try to go into the master's program for my creative writing. And I was like, my heart is totally calling me in this direction. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is a thing. So it's just been an absolute deep dive ever since I saw, those first videos.
That's
and
amazing.
That brings us where we're at today.
Where in that process did you meet Julius?
Julius was my employer, actually, many years ago. He owned a movie theater for many, many years. And one of my first jobs that I ever got was at his movie theater. And he was just an amazing guy back then. And after I left and I started, getting into school really heavily, when I would go see a movie there periodically, I would chit chat with him and stuff like that. And as time went on and I would go chit chat with him, those chit chats became longer and longer and longer and stuff like that. And, he was married at the time, so I didn't say anything, but I definitely had feelings for him, and I would go chit chat with him and stuff like that. But, as time went on and I came into one of those talks, came in to see a movie, say hi to him. And he had mentioned that, he was divorced and, he was kind of
You're like
rebuilding his life and all that sort of stuff. I was like, oh, so, okay. So I probably held off for like a month, and I was like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And I remember going up to his office and I was just going to, sit down and talk with him for a little while or whatever. Yep. And I kept dropping hints like, hey, I really like you and, all this other sort of stuff. And he just instantly dismissed it. He's just, there's a bit of an age difference between us. There's 13 years between us. Sure. So instantly dismissing it. I'm 22 years old, he's 35 and he's like, no. So I remember him just not listening. And I remember one day I just walked up to his office and I knocked on the door and I said, I'm in love with you. I don't care what anybody says. And I said, it's not just that I love you, but it's that I'm in love with you. And I'm very black and white and forthcoming with stuff. And I went up there and did that. And it was just flabbergasted. And he sent me away, actually. We joke about it all the time that he sent me away, but he's a really great guy. Very knight in shining armor, very moral. And he's like, you're 22 years old. You have no clue what you're signing on for with all this baggage and all of this stuff. And he goes, you need to go think about it. And he goes, so don't talk to me. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't do anything. Go think about it. Go pray about it. And I remember lasting like a day. And I was like, that's it. I'm done thinking about it. This kind of thing.
As all 22-year-olds do, they think it through.
And it's just been perfect ever since then. We've been together about 15 years now. Awesome. And it's just a wonderful journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So,
well, we got to give a big shout out to Julius, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be on doing this podcast right now. So he came in as tech support, and
he's the man. He is just the unsung hero. I don't think people understand just how much weight he actually carries with this business of ours. So it's amazing.
Well, very grateful to him.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So it's hard to like even follow that. Let's
I'm sorry.
No, I know it's all good. Let's talk a little bit about some of those like initial searches of yours of what you wanted to do. So we started with dog stuff when you were very young, and then you started in the vet tech field, but it's hard to see dogs so injured and and hurt in different ways.
Yep.
So you moved into creative writing.
Yeah.
Who were some of the big influences for you in terms of creative writing? Or do you have a favorite author or anything like that?
There's so many. I don't think I have a favorite, but there's so many. I'm much more into the classics than I am into modern, more modern authors. But I worked with kids for many years. I was a camp counselor, those sleepaway camp type things. I did that for many, many years. But they wanted the camp to be very magical. And so we had to pick names that were not our own names, but were our camp counselor names. And so my name was Shakespeare, because I was just so passionate about Shakespeare at the time. But yeah, I'm really big into all of the older authors. And I studied all of that, and it's still a huge passion of mine. I wanted to be a novelist. I mean, I still want to do that. It's just more in the back burner. But the classics definitely shaped me. Joyce, Dickens, all of those kinds of people definitely shaped me. And in high school, I was just devouring that kind of stuff at any chance I could get. And so it's a big influence in my dog training today, for sure. Just coming from that perspective.
Well, what influence? So, like, if we had to put a word to it, like put a pin on it, in what way does that influence your dog training?
The communication. I definitely believe that, studying English, studying creative writing has created a lot of clarity in communication for me. So as a creative writing student, of course, you have to write a lot of essays. And of course, you have to write personal essays. So personal essays are not something that are academic. They're very much about learning how to express your emotions and things like that. And I learned throughout the process that whether you're writing an academic essay, whether you're writing a personal essay, whether you're writing a novel or something like that, everything is all about creating a beginning, a middle, and an end that is, fluent. And so that strategy and that methodology has transferred over to my dog training, which I think is probably more valuable than anything else I've been able to include is keeping things very logical, very linear, and very tangible for my clients. And then on top of it, learning about emoting, that's what we would call it if we were studying creative writing, but learning how to express emotions and draw on the emotions of other people. I think that's highly valuable as well. Almost bringing some theatrics into dog training, because there are clients out there are audiences out there who need to feel in order to connect. And so sometimes you can't just spout facts to them, and sometimes you can't just speak logically to them. Sometimes there are people out there that need to feel. And I feel like all of those strengths have been brought over from that era of my life into dog training, and has helped us quite a bit in growing the way that we want to.
What's so interesting about that is I spent many years doing performing arts, right? And so like acting, dancing, things like that. And it's kind of the same variables, the emotion, the tonalities, the things. And Michael Ellis mentioned to us one time, he goes, good educating is really, I'm going to mess up his quote. I'm not going to quote him. I'm just going to say the thing. He said, good educators are there's a slight level of performance to good
absolutely. Absolutely. When I used to teach the group classes for our business, I don't teach them anymore. My staff teaches those now. But I remember when I was kind of transferring the reins of, that service over to one of my staff members, and, she'd come back after teaching and she'd say, okay, well, how did I do? And I said, technically you were perfect. I mean, you covered every concept perfectly. And I said, but nobody was moved by it. So, we have every single teaching, whether it's a private session, if it's a single video clip, if it is a group class, or it's a seminar, it's a performance in and of itself. And if we don't kind of appeal to all aspects of performance, we lose connectivity with the audience. And yes, I hold that to the highest standard here. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what's funny is when people think of the word performance, they think disingenuous. They think fake. Yeah. But what I realized through performance is if I can encapsulate a feeling, or I can generate an emotion that I would like others to have, but it comes from a genuine place, it's actually easier to do. Right. So,
Sure.
so
Of course.
what I find myself doing a lot in dog training is, and tell me if you do this, it's like your passion for dog training can ignite any emotion, right? Like I could get
Of
mad,
course.
I could get mad, I could get protective, I could get sad, I could get this. And that authenticity, when it's emitted,
Of course.
it makes people feel things.
It's no different than with the dogs. How many times do we tell dog trainers or clients that when you're working with your dog, you are a mirror? We are mirroring what the dog is doing. The dog is mirroring everything that we're doing. And so if you are disingenuine, you dislike the dog that you're working with, they're going to dislike you. No matter what face you put on it, no matter how much you pretend or you act, if you are coming with those types of intentions, they call you out on it. Your audience does exactly the same thing. If you're not genuine, you don't genuinely have those emotions, and you're not genuinely connecting with them from something that comes deep within, they're going to call you out on it. They're going to call you disingenuine, and you won't get those aha moments. So I don't believe a performance is disingenuine at all. I think it is something that is holistic, just like we tried to do with dog training, something that is holistic for the human client, just as much as the dog.
Yeah. And in essence, we're kind of trying to take dogs and people on a journey towards,
of course,
a goal, right?
Yeah.
And being able to guide people through emotions, through understanding, through rationality, through all that stuff. This is really, really cool conversation. I don't want to take too much time on this subject, but yeah, I think we're going to have you back on and have some deeper dives and stuff.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me just give you guys kind of something to break on. As I hear Stephanie talking about creative writing and creative reading, for that matter, and the history of utilizing the English language in a poetic way. And then I hear Brent, the emoting, but the genuine emoting. I know that's like a very passionate subject for the both of you. And what it sounds like to me is this really cool kind of flow between creating a system, creating a structure, creating a sense of order in an otherwise chaotic thing. But then there's that really cool symbiotic relationship where you want to have a little bit of feeling as long as you have a level of order to make it make sense and to direct it, like energy in a dog, right? And I think that's a really cool point to take our first break on, because when we get back, I kind of want to touch on some of the ways that you do add some structure to the chaos. Let's take a quick commercial break, you guys. We will be right back.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to Dog Trainers Podcast. You know what's a great way to support this podcast? By becoming a sponsor today. With sponsoring the podcast, you'll be helping us make this show the best it can be, and so much more. From hosting more local events, traveling throughout the country, and connecting with trainers from around the world. Ultimately getting you, the listener, more of the content that you love. For more information, please contact us at dogtrainerspodcast@gmail.com or visit our Instagram page at dogtrainerspodcast. Thank you guys, and now back to the show.
All right, guys, welcome back again. This is our interview with Miss Stephanie Vichinsky. This has already been a really interesting look into her history and what it is that kind of formulates her passion and her goals for dog training. But I want to start applying a level of order of how you go about taking these passions and taking these ideas and formulating them into a cohesive bit of social media or program that you present to people online. So I guess my first question would be to tell us, what is this mission? What is this thing? Like, how do you feel about dog training if you had to sum it up in a few sentences?
Man, summing up dog training, I guess it's connecting dogs to dogs, connecting dogs to people, connecting dogs to families, connecting dogs to, society, connecting dogs to tradition. I would say that that's pretty much what it is that everybody's trying to do, is trying to incorporate that.
Do you find that that training today is aware or in tune with that concept, or do we feel like some people maybe kind of veer off of that?
Well, I definitely think that there are a lot of dog trainers out there that are trying to do that, that are making that their end goal. And they are the ones that are the perpetual student, that are always looking for new ways of making that connection possible. People say that everything in dog training has already been done, but the avenues that we try and the perspectives that we take hasn't always been done. Everybody's got a different perspective, and that perspective creates additional communication. But I do think that there are a lot of dog trainers out there who find something that's working and just stay there. And if that's just, functional obedience, or if they find a niche on social media that's getting them a lot of, views and stuff like that, rather than continuing to grow and evolve as a human and as a dog trainer, I think they think, well, what's working? Why change it if it's working, kind of thing.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And something that you had said to us when we had first spoken with you, it was kind of what Brent and I took as like your overall concept or theory and where dog training should go. Tell me if I'm wrong about this, okay? And it was, dog training is basically designed to teach dogs how to make better choices, how to make decisions. And I guess I would love for you to just kind of elaborate on that.
Well, I think that's what the goal should be. I don't know if everyone's always thinking of it that way. So our kind of our slogan for our business is mind over mechanics. That's one of our trademarked slogans that we use. And the way that I perceive it is that you can teach the body to sit and down and come and heel and place, and you can do all those things. But if we're not actually addressing the mind, we miss a lot of things when it comes to that connection that we're looking for. And without teaching the dogs to think, I don't know how we could ever address the mind. I don't know how we could ever actually address behavioral issues if the dogs aren't thinking and comprehending. And so in our system, I'm just probably to the absolute disgust of my staff, but I'm constantly changing things. One week we're doing something, I'm like, no, okay, I love this, but we're going to do it this way this time, right? Because trying to get the dog to think as much as possible. And just for instance, just the other day, we were walking the dogs through a public location, and it's really tempting to just walk. It's like, okay, well, we're just going to walk through this. And if you can walk through kids and dogs and peoples and cats and kids and cars, you can do anything. But that's not enough, right? When my clients go, they're not going to just walk in a straight line through all this. They're going to take pictures of the sunset, and they're going to, make out, and they're going to get coffee, and they're going to, like, all these other life events are going to happen. And what is our dog doing in that time? The dog's sitting there saying, what am I supposed to do next? Right? Rather than thinking, And so I pulled my trainer off to the side and I said, you see this area where everybody's shopping? I said, let's go sit in the middle of that area. And I said, oh, let's shop. I said, let's sit there, let's stare at the clothes, let's pretend we're on our phones, and let's watch what our dogs are doing. And if they're struggling a little bit, let's coach. Let's say, move left, move right, move forward, move back, check in with me, do all of this sort of stuff. And not telling the dog to sit, not telling the dog to lay down, not telling the dog to make eye contact with me or any of those things, telling the dog how to think. That way, when we hand the dog back to our clients and they're trying to order a cup of coffee and some kid is reaching out to pet the dog says, no, I'm not really into that. I'm going to make myself a little bit of space, right? Rather than saying, I'm not into that. Now I have to eat your face kind of thing, which some dogs would choose, really helping them understand things in a more natural way, which I think kind of obedience kind of draws away from that. And sometimes being too rigid with the mechanics draws away from that thought process, that problem solving process.
Yeah. There becomes this detachment from autonomy, right? So like teaching dogs to make choices so that they can navigate the world on their own versus, as you said, people get so stuck to the criteria of obedience that it kind of prevents decision making, right? Like it keeps them trapped, it keeps them locked in.
I definitely feel that.
And there are times where maybe that's advantageous if the dog completely doesn't know what to do or is completely
absolutely.
confused. But yeah, I can definitely see that. If you were to kind of break down dog training in like how school had different subjects, right? School had math and science and biology and different subjects. What would you say your core subjects of dog training that you'd like to cover would be? Like, how would you categorize them?
If I was teaching?
No, just in general, right? Like if dog training, if you were teaching or just in general, like your general thoughts of what subjects are there in dog training that you think are important?
Yeah. I probably wouldn't be leaning towards obedience. In my board and train programs, I probably spend 3 to 5 days on obedience if I have an 8-week program. So it doesn't mean much to me. But if I was going to do something, I'd be discussing drives quite a bit. I would be discussing, of course, conditioning quite a bit. Drives is coming from the perspective of, the nature component, conditioning coming from the nurture component and how it shapes the dogs in front of us. I'd probably be coming from most of those avenues. And then, of course, discussing, connecting in a very similar way with the client that we are with the dog. But that would be my main topics if I was going to cover something.
Got it. Say it one more time. So it was nature, so like drives, covering drive, instinctual stuff, genetic stuff.
Yeah.
The nurture, which is the training and conditioning stuff. And what was the third one again?
Just connecting with the clients in the same way. So kind of taking the nature nurture concepts and applying it to clients as well, because they are just as complex when trying to, of course, educate. So taking all of those same concepts and applying it to both sides of the coin is very valuable.
Nice.
Got it. Cool. So it's kind of this like nature and then nurture and then make the rubber meet the road with the owner.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very cool. One of the questions that we wanted to ask you was, with all that you've been able to achieve in your career, what are some goals that you have for the future, some milestones that you hope to reach?
That question is harder to answer. With our family, it's a lot about prayer and kind of trying to figure out where God wants us to go to do the most benefit, for people, because we're all giving gifts. We're all giving gifts that are meant to help other people, meant to help the world around us. My gift is definitely communication. It is definitely my strong suit. So I feel like our business is being drawn more towards the teaching aspect. I can train dogs, of course, but I can only train so many dogs per year. I feel like with the teaching component, I am touching more lives, dog and owner and trainer, and saving a lot more people and dogs in the long run. So I feel like we've been leaning more towards that teaching component than the training component, like we have been in the past decade or so.
Oh, that's great. So kind of making a step towards education of trainers and
yeah,
it's like Michael Ellis always says this, a rising tide raises all ships kind of thing, right? And so if you're able to elevate the condition of dog training, and I think that's kind of where we're all on the same mission, right?
Yeah.
Like if we can help elevate dog training, dogs, 5 years from now, 10 years from now are going to be way better for it, right? By inspiring the next generation of dog trainers. And I think that's, to your point, I think communication being a gift, having the ability to bring people together is a gift, having the ability to connect and emote and all that stuff is a gift. And I think it's awesome. It's awesome. I think we're in this kind of dog training renaissance in a way. I don't want to make it sound super fancy, but there's a lot more of people thinking like us with the platforms of social media and connecting. We can connect with more like-minded people across the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really cool. In your dog training school, I assume you have so many students coming from different parts of the country, right? And how about internationally? They come internationally?
Yeah, we get, because we're so close to the Canadian border, we get lots and lots of people from Canada. But we get people from UK, Belgium, Germany, Australia. I wouldn't say that they're the vast majority of the people coming, but I would say they're probably 25, 30% of the students that are coming through are coming from another country. Even places like Mexico and Brazil and stuff like that, we get students from. So again, very, very humbling to think that someone would want to travel across the world to study with us. It's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Really cool. How long is your train the trainer programs?
So we have a 1.0 version, which is 5 days long, 5-day intensive course where they come work with us. And then we have a 2.0 program that they can sign up for after completing that, which is another 5-day course. The first one I would say is probably dealing with half theory, half hands-on. The second one is probably dealing with mostly hands-on, so that the students can really get the feel for dealing with behavioral dogs.
And then are those clients' dogs that you use in those programs, or do you get?
So more often than not, the students are bringing their own dogs. So in 1.0, we have observation seats where people don't have to necessarily bring a dog and they can watch. And the way that it works is that we have working seats, of course, where people can bring their own dog or a client dog if they'd like. And then any type of demonstrations for serious behavioral cases, we're pulling from our board and trains. The students are not working with those dogs. We are demonstrating with those particular dogs. And then in the 2.0 program, everybody's required to bring a dog, and they have to bring a behavioral dog to work with. And that's sometimes hard for the students to find just the right dog. I don't want you to bring a dog that's just easy peasy. I don't want to bring your dog that's already well trained. I really want you to bring a behavioral dog and go through this entire process with them and watch the change and the shift in you as a person and the dog in front of you and get that experience under their belt.
Logistically, is it ever difficult for someone to travel with a more difficult dog?
I've had people say that, well, usually it's trainers, so they're usually doing okay. With owners traveling with more difficult dogs, yeah, they're usually looking at, things like making sure that the dog's in a crate, or they're getting, medications from the vet just for the drive over and things like that. And that's all understandable. We have trained the owner programs as well, and owners might be looking more towards that. Whereas a trainer who's coming to a train the trainer program might have some more skills under their belt to handle that trip a little bit more effectively. But yeah, we're a big fan of driving the dogs, not flying the dogs,
Right.
If at all possible, just for the mindset of the dog. But some people have a little bit of a challenge. Some people won't sign up at all because it's a big challenge. But I'd say the vast majority of the people make it work and have good results in the program.
That's awesome. That's very
great.
Cool. That's one of the things actually that I wanted to touch on with you. Was I was looking through the website, reading the trainer programs and the training the owner programs. And I'd love to get some of your thoughts on what it was that really helped you delineate like when 1.0 would end as a concept and what we're going to work on, and when 2.0 would start, and what it was that helped you develop that skill set to like delineate things and separate things.
Well, I think because I was teaching the 1.0 for many years, the part that we couldn't always get to in 5 days was hands-on hashing out behavioral issues. And when I introduce my programs, I tell people my staff trains for 2 years to be able to truly handle behavioral cases. I mean, this is intensive stuff where we're always brainstorming and coaching and stuff. So to cram things into 5 days is very, very challenging. Yeah. So we are getting a lot of theory, we are getting hands-on, but sometimes the hands-on stuff has just got us to a functional level. It hasn't actually gotten us to the point where these students can really experience resource guarding. They can really experience heavy reactivity. They can really experience a lot of these things. You can make the 1.0 program significantly longer, but then you also have people that can't make that work, right? You've got a month-long program. It's about finding what works best for the students. You can't tell them, hey, you have to leave your job for a month or 6 months or whatever. Yeah. So kind of splitting it up has worked out really well for us, and making it something that they need. I really feel like students need time to absorb theory before applying theory.
Totally.
Sometimes you can teach theory and then apply theory right away, and then somebody gets bit. Right. Yeah. It happens really, really fast that way. So I think theory really needs time to set and be thought about and be implemented. And it
needs to be identified in like lower risk situations, right? Like work with lesser risk dogs,
Yes. And they need time to practice that for a while. Then they can come back in with a more challenging dog. They can come back in with more educated questions too, which is a big deal. You don't know what to ask. You don't even know what you're looking for half the time when you're going into a program. You're very green as a trainer. Right. You're just absorbing everything, and you don't even know where those aha moments are yet until you have time to go home and sit and think and practice, and then you come back. I might even wind up incorporating a 3.0 at some point. That's something that they can take even further down the road. But right now, it's just making sure that theory is really sunk in before application.
And that's awesome. That was my exact next question was, so presumably there could be a 3.0 and a 4.0, because you don't build Rome in a day. You don't learn how to train dogs in 5 days. And if there's like theoretically could take X many months or even years to learn how to train a dog, then your process, which I think it makes sense, is I'm going to break it down into bite-sized pieces, because for the sake of cost, for the sake of time, for the sake of just logistics of travel and accommodation, it's easier for people to take 5 days of their life instead of like 25 days out of their life. Right,
absolutely.
So that makes total sense.
Yeah. It's got to be tangible. And if it's not, then they're overwhelmed.
Well, and that's another thing that we, and I think a lot of other people admire about you, is you put a big emphasis on making things tangible. I'm looking right now at the methodk9 Institute website, where it's a reasonably priced online platform. There's more premium content, I guess you could say, but even that's so much simpler and easier to attain than traveling, right?
We wanted to make sure that there was an option for everybody. you have your expensive board and train packages, and that's because people are genuinely paying for your expertise 24/7 for a long period of time to rehabilitate a difficult dog. Then you have things that are more affordable. Maybe you're doing private sessions and you're capitalizing on our expertise, but you're doing the heavy lifting, and same thing with group classes and such. But maybe you have people across the country that say, I can't do board and train. I can't afford all of this or whatever. We started the subscription page to give those people an opportunity who maybe just don't have the budget, but need the knowledge, and they can apply it at their own pace and in their own way, and they can absorb it in their own way at their own timeframes and things like that. And so we tried to make sure that we had a service to meet everybody.
Which is awesome. I have a client, and he's also a friend and a mentor of mine here, and I'm in Phoenix, by the way. And he and I were working on some different stuff, as well, right? Not to give too much away before it's like all ready to go, but he would tell me exactly what you just said, which is products are meant to fulfill a need in the market, but product lines fulfill those better, because then people can kind of pick and choose to what extent or what level they need to invest and really learn and grow from these things.
Yeah, I do think that is valuable, because there are going to be people who learn in different ways, they adapt in different ways, different parts of their life happen at different times. And maybe the subscription page is just what they need at the time, or maybe a private session where they can just talk one-on-one with somebody is just what they need at the time. Or maybe they have a baby coming and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just absolutely overwhelmed. Board and train is what I need at the time. I think having that's just that wide spectrum is so valuable and important, because you might have the same client who needed each one of those things at the
different
time,
times.
at some point. Yeah.
You guys, I think, have done a really clean, really simple job of scaling those products and services, right? I think all the, just as another dog trainer, I think all of the pricing makes sense. I think that the materials are presented in a really clean, smooth, nice way. Like the website looks good. I think that the Institute website is really easy to navigate and so on. I think everything's nice and clearly laid out. And I want to talk to you about the other half of the team, the businessman. Kind of tell me about the role that Julius played in helping you design, what would we charge and how many classes would be in this and, and XYZ.
Yeah. So Julius handles so much. He handles of course, the tech stuff. So he builds all of our websites for us and creates all of that. And, when it comes to pricing, he's always doing, of course, research on, competitive pricing models and things like that, just making sure that from a business perspective, we're doing things correctly, doing right by the client, making sure that we're not overcharging, but also not undervaluing who we are or overvaluing who we are, but just trying to find that price point. And of course, listening to our clients, which he does a lot of. He is a big part of that client relations, where he's paying attention to what the vets have to say and the shelters and rescues who work with us have to say, our clientele coming in, their responses to the services. He's the one paying attention to all of that and adapting our services to best meet their needs and listen to their, of course, their praises, which is valuable, but also their constructive criticisms to help continually reform these programs and make them the best possible delivery for whoever it is that might be coming in. But yes, he's always doing all of that, and he's creating the community that supports us and things like that. He's just the man behind the scenes for sure.
What would that title for someone be for people who don't have a Julius and they were going to look for someone to listen to their clients and really find out what needs to be evolved and improved in their programs, and make sure that the not just the critiques, but that the praise is heard as well, and how to evolve and how to make sure the marketing and all that stuff. If someone were to be I want to find that person, who are you looking for?
We call Julius the operations manager.
Okay.
So he's kind of handling everything. So it all the way down to, how do our clients contact us? How do our clients schedule a phone call with us? What happens during a phone call? What are we looking for in a phone call with a client? When they come through our door, what does the intake look like? What does the intake for the dog look like? He's really mastering that operation thought process for us.
I think Julius should have his own class.
Email him. Tell him to do that, because I've been on his case for
I know 3 or 4 people that would be like, I'm signing up for Julius's class.
Dude, I would sign up for that class.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have been on his case for so long. He does teach in our train the trainer programs. He does a very big, large business section where he goes over, creating forms, creating contracts. He goes over insurance concepts. He goes over all of that. That is definitely his thing. And a lot of students need to hear it. especially the students that are trying to start their own business. They're like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions, and they really need that part of the program. But yes, he is absolutely invaluable.
So you've been telling him this and he just hasn't like,
it's not, being in front of camera is not his thing, speaking. He's a wonderful speaker. Honestly, he puts me to shame. If you folks think that the way that I communicate is really good, the way he communicates is even better. I probably learned a lot of my skills from him as well.
Nice.
But it's just not his thing. He likes being the guy in the background and stuff like that. And I keep trying to push him into the spotlight so people just understand it really isn't all me. But it's just not his thing. He's very humble. He's very happy to stay back there. And so he's a catch.
If our listeners, let's say, wanted to give him a polite little nudge in the right direction, how would they go about doing that?
They can email him directly if they'd like. His email is Julius, Julius, at methodk9.com. That's METHOD, the letter K, the number 9.com. If you want to nudge him in the right direction, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll give him a polite little. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to email him right now. I'm not even kidding.
So just to be clear, those of you guys listening who would like to have some type of business class from Julius, email him at julius@methodk9.com.
Yes.
We'll see how many come through.
I'm going to be in the doghouse for a little while for giving that information out, but that's okay. I think he needs it.
Well, and listen, and all jokes and stuff aside, we saw Julius off camera a second ago before we started recording, and you guys have a really loving dynamic. Like it seems that you guys have managed to balance being a family and running a business together really well, which lots of people fail at. So I guess I would just love to hear, was it always this easy, or were there evolutions that this went through?
No, it was not always this easy. It was challenging. We had a big relationship flip, several years ago. When I started the business, where, it switched to me being more of the breadwinner and him staying at home more with our daughter. That was a challenge, for sure. Just getting comfortable with those new relationship roles, ironing out the business and how we see things differently, because Julius absolutely knows business. And I absolutely know dogs, and finding the pathways that coalesce in between those has been challenging, and it's been a lot of conversations, and it has been a lot of constructive criticism back and forth and things like that. And honestly, it's been a lot of prayer on both of our sides of trying to always listen to what the other person is saying, what our spouse is saying, what emotion they're trying to convey, and really connecting with them on a deeper level, making sure that they're heard. We have been through that process, and I won't say that it's totally ironed out at this point. There's always going to be, levels of irritation here and there and things like that, because we work together 24/7. We're home together 24/7. But it is never with a, spiteful spirit. It is always with just trying to make things better, and possibly a miscommunication. And we'll sit down at the end of the night when our daughter goes to sleep, and we will hash out those miscommunications and say, so what did you really mean when you said this? And how could we go about this better? And I think that communication with us has gotten really good at this point. I feel really confident and comfortable with it. And it's been very divinely driven, very God driven, getting us there. So.
Nice. That's a breath of fresh air to hear. People, the fact that you guys are able. So like my mentor that I worked for 10 years, prior to starting my own business, him and his wife had a very similar bond. And I remember being an 18-year-old young dog trainer being like, life goals. Yeah. Right.
Oh, man, it is the most important. It is the most important life goals. The relationship with, they don't even have to be your spouse, but just the relationship with your significant other, whoever that is something to put so much time and effort and focus on, and bring humility to it, and work on yourself as a person, and work on that relationship. Nothing is going to bring you more value in life than that.
Well, and I can see the, obviously there's parallels between dog relationships and human relationships, but I always kind of make this joke. I was like, we're barely equipped to have successful human relationships, and we're over here trying to have a relationship with a different species, right?
Yeah.
But I can see how one helps the other. So many times we talk to trainers, and they'll say like, I'm glad I was a dog trainer before I was a dad, or I'm glad I was a dog trainer before, I started my, this or that concept. But same thing, if you have a loving marriage and you have a strong relationship with this individual, that can help you learn stuff about dogs for sure.
Of course. And I think it's incredibly important for business as well. I mean, I know there are a lot of single dog trainers out there who are successful, but I think
what's up?
I think
That's me.
I think having somebody in your corner that is just always cheering you on, because you have so many days where you doubt yourself as a dog trainer. That is just the nature of this industry, which is why people can get so mean and ugly about it. But just having someone there that's just always saying, "I got you." And it doesn't matter. You felt like I got you, right? It's invaluable. You can't replace that with anything.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I like back when I was a young trainer, my mentor's wife's name was Kelly, and we used to always joke as the guide trainers, like, we need a Kelly. And now it's like, we need a Julius.
I need a husband.
Man, every single student.
You know what? I'm going to marry him in.
That's exactly it. You need a bromance.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Well, Mariano is technically my bromance, so
very good.
He's married though. Me and my wife, or hit me.
He had to go ruin it.
Yeah, he had to mess it up.
Yeah, I know. I flipped the script.
I know.
Kind of tell us about, we were talking about the programs that you've built on the, the Method K9 Institute webpage. We talked about the Train the Trainer, Train the Owner programs, but you also have a very sizable online social media presence. Let's kind of dive into that a little bit.
That just goes on its own. That's just again another blessing from God. I would hope that people follow us because we're genuine and we create quality content and things like that, and it has multiplied and grown. And I can't really say that it has all to do with us. I mean, the stars have just fallen in line, and God has blessed us with that. But consistency in producing quality content, remaining genuine to who you are, I think has benefited us as far as social media goes. A lot of other avenues that people can take to try to grow a social media following.
Totally.
And ours is it's working for us. So I'm thankful.
Totally. Okay, so I want to ask you, I want to give you a quote that I love very much. And then I want to get your take on how you apply this kind of thing in your life, because you're a creative writing person.
Sure.
So the quote is, "The quality of your life is based on the quality of your communication. And the quality of your communication is based on the quality of questions you ask. And if you want better answers in life, you need to learn to ask better questions." Someone who was as successful a student, and specifically in the field that you were in, I'd love to know, is there a way that you kind of write or journal or how do you find that true north? Like you've been talking a lot about our goal is to help people, and our goal is to be accessible, and our goal is to this. And that's kind of that like true north. And lots of dog trainers get lost elsewhere. How do you find that? Is there a process?
I don't know if there's necessarily a process. I would probably say that it's more, I guess it would probably be more of our surroundings that keeps that as the true north. I think anybody who watches our content can see that we're extremely family oriented. I have an extremely close relationship with my family. My parents are here all the time. My staff calls my parents mom and dad, that they're that close to them. And I think having that love and that connection here all the time with our staff, with our child, with each other, with my parents, with our clientele, that keeps it the true north. I truly think that's those relationships. So there's nothing I'm doing at home. I'm not reading a book or doing anything that's keeping me centered. I think it's the love and commitment to the people around us that's keeping that as the focal point of our business.
Great. Life goals. Let's take a quick commercial break real quick.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to Dog Trainers Podcast. You know what's a great way to support this podcast? By becoming a sponsor today. With sponsoring the podcast, you'll be helping us make this show the best it can be, and so much more. From hosting more local events, traveling throughout the country, and connecting with trainers from around the world, ultimately getting you, the listener, more of the content that you love. For more information, please contact us at dogtrainerspodcast@gmail.com or visit our Instagram page at Dog Trainers Podcast. Thank you guys, and now back to the show.
Cool. So we are back from our commercial break. Again, if you guys are listening, we are interviewing Stephanie Vichinsky from Method K9. So right before the commercial break, we were talking about family and the ability, what keeps you grounded in kind of the why of everything, right? Like the mission that keeps you passionate and focused. And that was one of the first things that I noticed when I was following a lot of your social media stuff is there were no gimmicks. It was dog training, passion. And you said something earlier. You said, I just kind of keep my head down and I work, and you were focused, right? And you can actually see that when you watch your content. You can see that you're focused, that you have, your eyes on a target, that you're and even if that target is as simple as like, I want to help and serve others. Right. And so as a podcast, we've kind of made it our mission to serve those who serve others. Right. And this is, finding people with great voices and good messages and things like that, people who work really, really hard on following that passion, because that is ultimately what we felt the dog training world was missing. Right.
Yeah.
Growing up in the dog shows, you said it's about 15 years now, right? You've been doing this?
Yeah.
Okay,
well, yeah. Training's probably 13.
13?
Yeah.
Cool. But you've been passionate about dogs your whole life.
Forever.
Yeah. So,
forever.
So coming up in the dog training world and game, who are some of your bigger influences? Like, where did you start? We all have different places we start and we evolve into something. What were some of your first influences in dog training?
Honestly, this is going to surprise some people, but I do talk about this often. But the first 5 years of my career, I was a pure positive trainer. Nice. So I dived very heavily into that, studied that very heavily, and really absorbing what's going on there. And so in the beginning, I was drawing from a lot of pure positive influences, like Susan Garrett and Emily Larlam and things like that. I was pulling a lot of influence from them. Yeah. And, just really just absorbing whatever you could, but also there's so many influences that I think people also need to take into consideration. Every interchange that you have with every person in your life somehow influences you for better or for worse. And, I've had employers in the past who have influenced me as far as becoming a good business owner. I've had employers in the past who have influenced me on exactly what not to do when you own a business, and being cognizant enough to really make note of those things makes everybody an influence in your life, and then, I have teachers, through my schooling who have influenced me on my teaching capabilities, and they're dog trainers, of course, wonderful dog trainers like Ivan and, Michael Ellis and things like that, who have, pulled me more into a balanced, way of looking at dogs and things like that. But I wouldn't say that any one person has had any real specific influence on it. If you were to look at my dog training, you would say it's a mutt for sure. I would say everybody's dog training is probably a mutt in some concepts, pulling lots of stuff, lots of ideas and concepts from, other dog trainers, from behaviorists, from vets, from shelter rescue, from the literary world, the theatrical world, kind of pulling influences from all of that. And then, of course, teaching from the perspective that you understand the best. So that's where you put your own spin on things is, how do you see it and how does your perspective see it? And so I wouldn't say there's any real things where I was like, I studied this person, through and through, and they really shaped me who I am as a dog trainer. I absorbed everything, absolutely absorbed everything. And I still do that to this day. Everything that I can possibly get my hands on, I want to absorb and learn. And, and I think I'm seasoned enough now to kind of know what makes sense and what doesn't necessarily. When I see it, when you're a raw dog trainer, I don't think you necessarily know,
right.
What direction. You don't know what is a gimmick, what is, something like that. Cause there are a lot of gimmicks out there where it is about making money and stuff like that. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, but I feel like I'm seasoned enough now that really studying and research and pulling from every possible avenue influences my dog training still to this day. But I think I have a more educated eye at this point.
What do you think drives that I was actually going to say, what do you think drives that curiosity? But it might just be curiosity, right? Like that might be the driving force, because I'm of the same, type of mindset where like, same thing when I meet people, I'm like, someone has something interesting to say that I don't know. Right? And so same thing when it comes to different styles of dog training. What is it in you that allowed you to take it? Because I've also met dog trainers that they need the way. Like they want to know the way, the only way, and you can't give them too many layers or else their brain's going to.
Yeah, very, very black and white. So I do meet students like that who are black and white. They need it black and white as it can be. And then there are other students who are comfortable in the gray in between. I think being comfortable in the gray is a little bit of an advantage. Being able to be malleable in there. And we have to understand that the nature of behavior and our understanding of behavior is not concrete. Despite all of the study and everything that people have done, there are still what ifs that come into play there. So there is a gray element there, and we have to be malleable within that. But as far as my driving force, I really don't know what it is. I've always had just an absolute insatiable appetite for knowledge. I was the kid, at 14, 15 years old when everybody's out on a date and I'm, reading the origin of words, or, are they French, are they Greek, are they whatever? Yeah. And I'm at home reading that just to tickle pink, thrilled to death. I remember I was telling somebody throughout high school, I used to read, 1 to 2 books per day. I just couldn't stop. And I think that's just been in me, and maybe that's just part of our family. I don't know. My mom is a dictionary. You can ask her literally anything, any word under the planet, she can spell it and she can tell you the definition of it. Wow. And I've never been able to stump her. And I think I've just been enamored with that from the very beginning. So I don't think there's anything specific that drives me. It's just that thirst for knowledge. I think knowledge is what makes everything better, other than God, of course. But knowledge makes everything better, makes us significantly better people, I think, in the long run.
Yeah. So if we wanted to be able to bother your mom to make a course, we would email her at.
You would, yeah. I would love to see like a trivia show with Stump Steph's mom on vocabulary, because I have not been able to do it. I used to come home from school and I'd be like, I got this amazing word that she has never heard. And I come in, Hey mom, what does this mean? And she's cooking dinner and she's got 11 things. She just got done working a full-time job. She's cooking dinner. She's balancing everything. And she's like, it means this. And she doesn't even turn around. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Wow. Way to make some shoes that are impossible to fill, mom. Thanks a lot.
You're like, geez, mom, we just set the bar so high.
It's just
I know. It's ridiculous.
That's awesome. Would you say it's temperament? Maybe it's just temperament. Right? Like maybe it's just how we're just.
I'm extremely type A.
Yeah.
And this is something that my husband, I'm perfect in his eyes. Other than this, no, there's many flaws, but this is one of them that I just can't stop. I can't just. It's hard for me to just sit and watch a movie. I'll watch the movie, but I've got 3 books that I'm also reading at the same time, and that sort of stuff. It's hard for me to do that. And I remember working with kids, and when you meet me, I have a very laid back personality. I have a very calm personality. When you get to know me, I'm very, I don't know what the word is, but I can be funny and I can be relaxed and stuff like that. And I remember my, the senior staff coming and talking to me, and they're like, we've got you figured out now. They're like, you're totally type A, masked as type B. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I have this like very calm personality, but if you like put something in the wrong place, I'm secretly going, that kind of thing. That's definitely me. So I think personality plays a big role into it. I wish I could change it, but I can't. But I think it's working
no
for
need
us
to
right
change
now.
it. There's no need to change it. I think you figured it out with the masking, right? like I could be both.
I got the mask
whenever
down,
I want.
so
whenever I want. Yeah, no, I hear that.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to have the level of introspection to be like, it's not a matter of changing it. It's good to identify it. I think that's a really strong skill. But I think as people who are dog trainers who seek to kind of take their programs to the next level and maybe hiring staff or taking on partners or whatever it is, it's not a matter of change it necessarily. Sometimes it's a matter of put the pieces around you that complement who you are, right? So if you're type A, maybe there's a person who's like a type B or C. that helps round you out, so to speak. And even if it's not like the types, because there's different ways to gauge personalities and all that stuff, right? Then oftentimes it's a matter of writing out, at least for me, I need to write things out and I need to see them on paper in order to like make my thoughts make sense. Except for when we're freestyling, funny enough.
Yeah. Mariano freestyles. He's pretty good.
The way that I have to do things, and much to my wife's dismay, this is also how I wrote my vows, is I will sit down with a sheet of paper and write my job description. And then I kind of look at what are the pieces, like what all is required to get this off the ground. And then there has to be this level of realism, like which of these can I do, like realistically, not with training and in the future, what can I do right this minute with the time that I currently have available, XYZ, right? And then what are the other things that I can't do? And then find someone to fulfill that role. And then comes the whole process of, well, what do I have to pay them? What are the, like, where does my role end and theirs begin? And I think that for trainers, again, who may not have a Julius, something like that might be a really strong way to start thinking about rounding out your personality quirks.
Sure. I do also think that there's a lot of value in growth in looking at yourself and growing as a person. I think that's incredibly valuable, especially if you're going to be teaching, because you as a teacher need to adapt to your audience, which means that you need to be able to and have already tried coming from multiple different perspectives and challenging yourself to come from multiple different perspectives, not just talking at them, but actually connecting from multiple different perspectives, even perspectives that don't make any sense to you. I think that can help round out a lot of, quirks that you might find challenging with your own personality, but being introspective, really looking, saying, this is where I struggle. How would I challenge myself to see outside the box? Or how would I challenge myself to see this from a different perspective? And things like that can only improve your communication, only improve your skills, can only improve the connection that we've been talking about throughout the entire process.
That's a cool way to look at it. And you just kind of jogged a thought of mine. So we've been talking a lot about how managing employees and managing a relationship and all this other stuff, it helps one see other people's perspectives and grow in that way. Is it different with a child, or is it the same?
Oh man, it is. Having a child is by far, I tell all my students, you should all have children if you want to become the absolute best dog trainer. And I said, now, if you're not going to make yourself a better person and you're not going to care for that child and all of these other things, I said, then absolutely don't have children. But if you're willing to make all of those steps, I said, having a child is going to make you just a phenomenal dog trainer, because raising a child means that you have to fix all the broken parts of yourself. Whereas with a dog, I think it's really easy to just sidestep things and brush things under the rug and blame it on the dog or blame it on the owner. With your kid, if you genuinely want a true relationship with that kid, you've got to fix all the broken pieces in yourself. And honestly, that's something that's going to carry over into your career tremendously. My husband and I are on that journey. Boy, are we on that journey. We are. Every night we sit down and talk and we're like, oh my gosh, she's responding this way because that's how I respond, or that's how we were responded to, or something. Like, there's so much that goes into it. But yeah, having a child, you have to become the best version of yourself in order for that child to truly be successful. And I'm sure we have, I'm sure we have, issues with our parents, or we have issues with, we know people with issues with their parents and stuff like that. And we say, man, if my parents had just put that much effort into it, things could have been totally different. And I truly believe that. So with my own kid, it's like, there is so much effort into connecting and creating clear communication and stuff like that. And it doesn't come from her. It 100% comes from us, that nurture side of it. Man, boy, do we have to work so hard on becoming the best people that we can be for her. But yeah, that's important stuff for sure. So connecting with a child it's going to change you.
That's awesome.
I love how you keep bringing back the theme of connection, because we started that, it's like a good comedian. They'll always come back and they'll bring.
Yeah, that's the creative writing in you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And connecting to family, connecting to dogs, connecting to clients, connecting to kids, connecting to it's all truly about connection. And
absolutely.
Me and Mariano, we've talked a lot about different ways of helping people. And last year I was in Hawaii, and randomly, literally, there's a story where we got drunk at a bar, and we was chatting with this guy next to me. And long story short, within 3 days, we were at the Humane Society, and we were talking to the board of the Kauai Youth Foundation, and they wanted to figure out a way to create a program for high school kids on the island of Kauai, right? And they have a leadership program, and I didn't know that there was a huge like suicide rate on the islands. I didn't know that there was a lot of teenage suicide. Wow. And one of the guys, he puts me in front of these people, and he makes me give this pitch of this program that I was coming up with in my head. And at that moment, it was put on the spot, but I honed in on something, and I honed in on connection. And the words that just came out of my mouth were like, you know what? Dog training is one of the most important skills that I think this new generation can develop, because dogs are our last connection to nature. And over the years, we've lost our own connection to not only nature, but to our own natures.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
when you keep making this all about connection, and I'm just like, fuck, that's why dog training is so important for this generation.
Oh, absolutely.
Generations, you know?
Absolutely.
So I'm very moved by that artistic way you kept bringing connection back to this.
So one thing I teach my students, and this is something that everyone can take. But when you write an essay, when you give a speech, when you write a novel, the steps that you're following is tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. And you just, everything that you do. So every social media video you make, every, whatever it is, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. And 100%. Just keep circling it around.
100%. And sometimes you catch yourself saying the same 12 things a bunch of different ways. But
it's helpful.
Yeah.
It's helpful though. I mean, how many of our favorite videos or classes or whatever do we watch over and over and continue to draw new inspiration from it?
Yeah. It's never ending. Yeah.
Well, last and final question, wanted to ask you, we ask all of our special guests this. What do you feel it is about, well, it's kind of evolved over the last couple seasons. So dog training is art, right? Do you believe dog training is an art form?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is it that you feel that you've been able to tap into in your own artistry that really allows you to make the impact that you're making on the dog training world?
It probably is that communication, finding the clearest possible way to get through. And that doesn't necessarily mean words. It doesn't necessarily mean body language. It doesn't necessarily mean any of that. And it comes back to that connection. But sometimes the clearest way to get through to a client is maybe through the worst experience that they've ever been through. Sometimes the easiest way to get through to a client maybe is their sense of humor. And finding that avenue and connecting directly to them, I feel is probably the biggest strength in our company. Probably the biggest strength as far as our social media presence goes, and things like that, and trying to connect with, whether it's just a single person or a larger audience, but trying to find that connection and that humanity, which I do think is often missing with dog training. And if we do consider dog training an art, then that does somewhat remove the science component of it and bring more of that gray area, more of that artistic area to it. And I think that's more where the connection comes in. I don't think the connection necessarily comes through the science. I think the connection comes through the humanity.
100%. Damn, that was a good answer. Sheesh. That was good. We're going to clip that, put that on social media. It's going to be good. Well, we're going to wrap up this interview, and we want to thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us. Honestly, this was a great, I have a really good instinct when I see people's content and we see authenticity, we tend to become friends with them later. So I hope to continue to have conversations with you and
I'd love that.
Text back and forth and things like that.
Oh, and we're going to have Scrabble battles.
Oh,
I have a question for you, gentlemen, before we end all of this. I'm incredibly grateful for you having me on here. This is a question for my own personal thing, but also for the listeners as well. how do we best support the two of you? I know you said that this podcast is done strictly with your own finances. You know, you're not running advertisements, and it's not funded by anybody else but you. How do we give back to you in the most meaningful way?
You just did. Making friends. And that was what the idea was for Brent and I starting this podcast. Brent and I were friends for years before we were ever doing this podcast together. And when we decided to do this, you know, Brent and I try to do this thing where we'll kind of flesh out ideas together, and it's not always pretty, but it's always effective. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we'll sit and boil down like, well, let's do this. Why? Okay, fine. Let's do that. Why? And it came to this understanding of, what do we really want? Like you said, like not just to help dog training, which we obviously want to do, but what do we want as people, as friends, as partners in this whole thing? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We want to make friends and we want to learn. Like we just want to be students, and we want to continue to grow our network. And
I would say exactly our three pillars, right? Education, inspiration, collaboration. The best way that people can serve us is by collaborating and asking questions to each other and not judging each other. And you know, we really tried to curate a group of people that we believe in that are on path, right? They're not there for the extra, you know, superficial stuff. And so we've been fortunate enough, like 2 years ago or 5 years ago when we started the podcast, like we never thought that we would be friends with the people who we've watched all their courses, we've watched all their videos, we've done all these things. We had zero clue that we would be collaborating with Michael Ellis in a seminar 2 months ago. Like that's a dream come true. And so I think just in the reciprocity and the sharing of that mission to educate each other, inspire each other, and collaborate with each other.
And I'll add one more thing. I'm sorry that part of it, part of what I find inspiring is not only with you guys, but you guys fit into this category, but we have friends like Tyler Muto, like Tom Davis, like Larry Crone, like who, on top of having successful platforms and offerings, also, like just to keep it real with you, also have successful long-term relationships and marriages, and it's working, right, with work. And I've seen personally, I'm sure we all have seen personally, where someone develops and establishes their career path in such a way that it manages somehow to leave their partner behind, and then that becomes the rift. So just seeing you guys build something, but also building it together, that's already really cool, because, you know, I like to do that thing where you're kind of a fly on the wall and just observe and pull the lessons from it that I think are valuable, right? Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I just want to know you guys more. I'm gonna go out for the next. I'm not kidding at all. I'm gonna go to the next 1.0. I'm down. We're gonna buy some board games.
Oh, awesome!
I'll bring McKenna. We're down, and just make this thing happen.
That's fun. Great. What I'm hearing though is that both of you are going to be extremely difficult and not really give me a tangible way to pay you back for this.
Okay, fine.
That's what I'm picking up from this.
All right, how about this? Okay, if you wanted to support the podcast, like, share, comment, subscribe. It's a podcast. Just help us spread the word, and that's what people can do.
Yeah. When we do have events, come to the events, right? Because usually those events are going to be for education, inspiration, and collaboration for the dog training industry, right? That's the best way to support us. In the next couple months, we have some projects coming out. Some of them are paid, some of them are not paid, you know, and please support us that way. But thank you for asking that question. That was really kind of you.
Oh yeah. Well, you're still gonna find stuff in your mailboxes and your emails and stuff like that. We're just gonna make it all happen. That's how our business works. You know, we like to take care of people. We actually feel incredibly uncomfortable if they don't let us take care of them. You guys were kind of borderline there for a little bit, but we're gonna find a way to support both of you and make sure that we take good care of you.
You're so kind.
Sure. And so that everybody's aware on where they can find you. Method K9, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and you guys in your Instagram bio have a link tree for Method K9. It's methodk9.com, right? The online course is methodk9institute.com. The methodk9.com is like the main webpage, right?
Yep. And they can get to the Institute from that page as well.
Excellent. Anything else that we want to kind of bring to the forefront? Anything you're promoting? Anything that you want to tell people about?
Oh, no. You folks have done a wonderful job. I appreciate all of it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being on. This was an amazing interview. You're a new friend for sure. Looking forward to meeting with you in person.
Yeah.
Excellent. I enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, and thanks for being our last guest of season 2.
Woo, going up.
Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers, for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
We really hope that you enjoyed this episode and can't wait to be back with you guys. Be sure to follow us at Dog Trainers Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't forget to punch the hell out of that subscribe button and leave us a review.
Remember, guys, this is your podcast. You're the best listeners in the world, and we'll see you next time.